Welcome to Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, a.k.a. Wolf, and with me, as always, is Sal.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm happy to be here, as always.
Yeah, Sal, the guy that just still will not change his name.
It's getting closer, though, I'll tell you that
your
much,
real
yeah.
name is Mondo.
Salresian.
Mondo sounds better. It sounds cooler.
Yeah.
You sound like a surfer.
Yeah.
Sal just sounds weird.
Just short,
and
sweet,
also
to the point.
with us today is Chief. Chief,
Hello, everybody.
you want to weigh in on this whole Sal versus Mondo thing?
I've been calling him Mondo Burger.
That's what Mondo. That's you know what? Mondo Burger. There you go.
Yeah, just remember, there's cheese and lettuce and everything, all the trimmings that are supposed to be on a hamburger.
The bacon
Is on a Mondo Burger.
That's it. Plus more.
Sounds disgusting.
Plus more.
It sounds disgusting because you're supposed to be the salad czar, not the burger czar.
Oh, but you know how that is.
The burgers are bizarre.
Folks, I promise you we're not stoned here. I'm just kidding. It just sounds ridiculous. All right, so what we have today, we have a show lined up for you. We got Chiefy came back. We're going to talk a little bit about
Get some more Mexican folklore. Isn't that right, Chief?
folklore.
Yeah, a little Mexican folklore, little legends and lores, some Tejano folklore.
Oh, yeah, and I finally got the story that I've been, promising to tell you, Wolf, and I've touched on it a little bit in another episode or so.
Well,
But I
it's
got the
taken
story.
so long.
Well, I had to talk to my mom, I wanted to get all the 411 on
What
it,
kind of son doesn't talk to his mother?
Well, hey.
Hey, with the Latina moms, that takes a minute, bro. Like, how is everything?
You got to have time out of your
mijo?
day
And
to do that.
how's your wife, mijo? And
You gotta have
there's a
time out of your
whole
day.
interrogation, bro. Like a whole
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
questions.
On the average, I get the 4 to 5 hour talk every time. So,
Wow. Hope everybody's Memorial Day went well or was good, whatever. That's about that time. But by the time you hear this, it'll be like, a long time from that.
Quite possibly, but that's all good, though. And, hey, before we get started, let's give them the email, man.
Yeah, it's DasWolfman88@gmail.com, DasWolfman88@gmail.com, and wolfandsal@gmail.com, wolfandsal@gmail.com. Want to touch about that real quick. A lot of you have sent me your emails. You've sent me your stories. And I am getting back to people that are from late April. That's how far back we are right now. And this is Memorial Day. So, I'm sorry that it's taken so long to get to you, but we have gotten slammed with a ton of information, stories, and people. I'm trying to talk to people, trying to call people, getting, I was working out last night and I was listening to somebody tell me their story while I was working out. And I was like, hey, just tell me your story, man, and I'll work out. And so he did. The guy was really cool. I'm going to hope maybe get him on the show. I was talking to another young lady who's a paranormal investigator out of Colorado. I was talking to her earlier today, and she sounds pretty promising. We got a lot of cool stuff lined up. We got some good researchers, some authors we're going to be talking to. I've been talking to a plethora of people.
It sounds good.
And so
brother.
we have a lot of good interviews hopefully coming up pretty soon. Paul Sinclair, I've been talking to him.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm trying to get Luke Penton to come on the show. Lon Strickler.
Oh, hey,
So
he expressed interest in our show? Awesome.
Yeah, we got some.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, we got some people that we're trying to get on the show that we've been talking about it back and forth, whatever. And so, but we just we're so many people that we talk to, that we've been talking to, and we're trying to get these things going. Got a guy that's a researcher that talks about sea monsters.
Oh, nice.
Sea cryptids, whatever. He's been on TV and stuff, so we're gonna have him. That's all stuff coming up in the future, and so I hope everybody likes the show up to this point and everything that we've been doing.
There's some field stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Yep, Chief, you've been doing some field investigations. Well, not really. He just kind of walks around haunted houses, and he's like
Creeping about.
I disrespect you, ghost. Come out here and fight me like a man. And then basically, and then he runs.
Who's there? Who's there?
And then he goes, what was that? I heard it. What was that? And then he feels something warm run down his leg.
Hey.
I feel ectoplasm. What was that?
Or if you're part of the group, my name is Jeff.
My name is Jeff. So anyways, we got a lot of stuff going on, guys, and we hope that we can get these people, get them on the show. We're going to interview a lot of people. We had a ton of stuff coming up, ton of stuff planned. So, of course, the Vic interview, and we had Simon Young. Got a lot of feedback about the Simon Young. People accusing me of like disrespecting God. I don't even know where that they could possibly get that from, because I'm the furthest person from disrespecting God. I love God. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I do not adhere to Simon's beliefs. He doesn't believe in God. That's what he believes, you know.
Yeah, man.
Those are his beliefs, you know.
There was one time you kind of disrespected my cousin Jesus, but I don't. That's
completely different. That's Jesus. Your cousin, though. That's
completely different Jesus.
That's not Jesus Cristo. Like when they knock on the door and they're like, "Jesus loves you," I'm like, "What? You better not be spreading the rumors, man."
And the game's on, and there's a phone where you're like, Jesus, and your mom's like, "Mijo, no." I'm like, "No, I'm talking about our cousin, Mom. Chill. Talking about Jesus.
Talking about Jesus Pablo.
Yeah, okay? Chewy, you know, Chewy.
I'm talking about Jesus.
Yeah, talking about Chewy.
Yeah, awesome. I just, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, they'll come and they'll knock on your door if they think you're Latino, and they'll talk to you about it in Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. They'll tell you that Jesus loves you, and you're like, really? And you're thinking of like the maintenance guy, and you're like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
How do you know this? Did he tell you this?
We had to save Loki's brother from some Jehovah's one time. And he was like, they were going to give me books, guys.
They're going to give you the book of knowledge.
Awesome.
And if you're Jehovah's Witness, no disrespect. I don't disrespect anyone's religion. I have had many spirited debates with Mormons, with Jehovah's Witnesses. They've come to the house, and I've sat and talked to them, and I've actually fed some of them, and we've talked. You have your belief, I have mine. We try to convert one another, and then we go about our day. That's how it goes.
And I mean, that's been the natural order of things when you get into the realm of world religions and stuff. You're going to have people trying to convert other people to their way of thinking. And hey, you can do that. This is America. You can try. You can talk to people. If they don't want to talk to you, they can run away and all that good stuff. As for us, hey, whoever you are, whatever you believe, do your thing.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
At the end of the day, all you can do is tell them, I care about you, and you're going to burn in hell. I'll see you later. That's all you can do. I'm sorry. I can't help you. Goodbye. And you just slam the door in their face.
You're
nah,
cool,
I'm just kidding.
but you're a heathen.
There were some Mormons that used to come to at the haunted house. I'll tell you a quick little creepy story. There were some Mormons that used to come to the haunted house, and now Squid was there. I don't know if he's listening, Squid, but we were there, and we were just, we were being nice to him. There were these two young guys. I felt bad for them. They're out in the heat, in that summer heat, and they were just like running around on their bikes or whatever with their little helmets, And so they came by, and I guess me and Scorpion had let them in, or Scorpion had let them in one day, and so they were like thinking, then, oh, we can convert these people, So one day I was there with Squid, and we're sitting there, and it was just me and him, and we're sitting there at the table, and literally the knife, the knife thing, how it would fall off the wall.
Yeah.
The knife thing did that.
Oh
and they were like, oh, and they kind of looked. One of them looked, and I was like, this is a little blonde-haired kid. I felt sorry for him, because he was like, what was that? And I was like, it's a demon.
I think I vaguely remember that.
I was like, it's a demon, and the kid was like, well, what? And I was like, well, yeah, anything that's not of God is demonic. Obviously, God didn't knock that knife off the wall, so the kid got up and left. And then his friend was in the bathroom, and his friend came out, and I was like, your friend took off because the demon knocked the knife off the wall. And this is a true story. And the kid was like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And so the kid left. They left, dude. I don't know if you remember. Chief, you weren't living there, but I know you probably
vaguely remember
that story
about that.
Yeah. And so anyway, that happened to me and Squid, and I was just like, dude. And then after that, Squid was like, dude, we shouldn't scare him like that. I'm like I did it. I'm like, I'm not pulling it with a string. It just happened. He's like, we shouldn't scare him like that. They're fun to argue with, Like he actually enjoyed it. Like he'd bust out the Bible and start arguing with them back and forth,
Yeah.
Like Squid's super religious or anything. He just likes to argue, But anyway, that was a kind of a freaky incident. So those two Mormon guys were,
They chalk one up another one for the house, man.
They left. They were just like, we're not coming back. We're done, So,
but hey,
mark that address off the list.
Yeah. They're like, they got something going on over there. We don't need to be going over there and talking about the, Church of Latter-day Saints or whatever to them. So, but anyways, like I said, I don't disrespect anybody's religion at all. So anybody who took it as that Simon was being, not whatever, that was what he was doing. And he was talking about walking into portals and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not doing that either.
I don't blame him. I mean, he's a researcher, very straight up guy, very knowledgeable. If he feels that that's what he has to do in order to get that undeniable proof like that, well then, hey, all I can say is do your thing, Simon, because I support you.
He goes out there to the Blue Mountains, where I've heard the stories of people going missing out there.
Yeah, I
wouldn't even want to be, and then there's this other area I know up in Canada where people's heads are getting ripped off. You know about that? In the
that
valley,
highway,
that valley, and then
the Valley of the Headless Men.
The Valley of the Headless, whatever. And I'm going like, what? I would not be that interested in Bigfoot to be getting my head torn off.
I'm like this, brother. I'm like, if heads are rolling and you can't pass it off on bears, well, you know, and this is up there.
Well, bears don't go rip your head off. They just chew you up and bite you
and eat you or whatever.
Yeah. Maul you.
All that good stuff. And I mean, and up there's nothing, according to mainstream science, there's nothing up there bigger than the grizzlies and all the stuff they have up there. Everything else wouldn't be able to rip your head off real easy. The way that all the accounts of that area are told and the details behind them, according to the First Nations people up there, is that they're ripped off the body. And
yeah.
So,
because even I don't think, and Chief, you, and this is once again, I want to just preface it with like, I'm not bragging, but Chief, you know, this was a little bit before you started working there, but I know a lot of the guys told you this. I got in a fight with these two guys one time outside, and they were big dudes, and I broke one of them's neck. Now I didn't break his spine, like he wasn't paralyzed. He wasn't paralyzed, but I hit him and it broke his neck. And he was a big dude. He was a big brother, man. I wasn't like fighting with no little kid. It was a hip hop club and it was pretty dangerous. And me and Willie were outside and or Taz, as everybody knows him. And I popped the guy because they jumped me. And then Willie came out and there were three of them actually, but two of them I really got a hold of. And when he fell, his head kind of went funny.
Oh, wow.
And then I ran inside. This was back when 6th Street was like the Wild West, you know? And so then I see this guy probably like 3 or 4 months later, and he was wearing like one of those things on his neck, looked like a blender.
Oh, yeah, those halos.
Yeah, neck brace.
Yeah, and Jerome and everybody was like kind of like, oh, that's that guy you hit. Oh, my gosh, that's him, you know? And he had this like thing in his neck. And I felt kind of bad, you know, but dude, I'm not going to, you know, I was like broke back then. And I had like one slice of pizza. And I was walking back into the club, and they were beating.
I remember he knocked it out of your hand.
Knocked it out of my hand because they were beating up some other dude. That ain't. I'm one of those people. I'm on my business. You know what? You're over there. Your house is getting raided. I'm that guy mowing the lawn across the street, not paying attention to what's going on with your house because that's not my problem. So these dudes are jumping some dude, and that dude's like, "What fool?" And he slapped my pizza out of my hand, and I'm watching my pizza in slow motion go to the
sidewalk.
My last $2 because they give you the industry discount over there at Rapolo's. And I'm like, and so I looked at that first guy, and I was like, you're in big trouble, dude. And I fisted the North Star that dude's face. Like, I want to say
that was my first week, and that was like my first glimpse of like,
oh, I don't think so.
Holy, like
that might have been. You saw a fight right when you first started.
Kind of like saying, you know,
that I was fighting with a guy outside, and it was around Halloween or something like that. That's what you're talking about. I was on the news or something. I'm talking about this dude.
It's kind of like saying which time, bro, you know?
Yeah, Willie was doing that to me the other day. Willie was like, yeah, this guy, he was telling Tony, and Tony was like, oh, really? And then I couldn't even remember because there was so many.
That's like saying, remember that time we put clothes on? Or remember the time we, you know?
But this guy, though, no, I remember because he broke his neck, and then the cops came and was talking to us about it or whatever. They didn't really care. The guy was like, they had literally beaten this other little dude into like a coma.
Oh, wow.
And so when I did that to that dude, they just came in there to see what, you know, because the guy had to go to the hospital, and they were like, who is the guy that did this to him? And back then, I only weighed about 275. You know, I was a big guy, but I wasn't like no monster, you know? And this guy was a pretty big dude, and his buddy was even bigger. And I knocked the crud out of his buddy too, and put a whooping on him pretty good. And then I ended up going inside, and I was just mad about the pizza thing, you know, and I remember Willie, that was the first time Willie had seen me fight. But I don't think you were there yet, Chief, but you probably heard the stories. But I'm telling you, even on my best day, I don't think I could rip a guy's head off.
Yeah, the ripping of the head off, that takes, for us to rip the head off something, when you think about it, it'd have to be something like a mouse or a squirrel.
A chicken?
You know, or a chicken.
I heard of a chimp, right? Chimp being strong enough to rip a head off.
I don't know, man. I never have seen an animal do it. I've seen a dog bite a cat, like, you know, but it's pretty brutal. But
right.
Anyway,
but you can see that. I mean, you can look at a cat.
These Bigfoot,
the size disparity, yeah.
Sasquatch creatures are definitely not to be messed with, dude. And the ones that Simon's talking about, 10 to 14. Are you kidding me?
Oh, he's talking about the Quinkins or Clinkins. Or
what were they called? What do you call them?
I'm trying to remember. He had a particular word.
I want to say that was the name of it. The Clinkins or.
Something to that effect. But those words specify
And I
the big
can't
ones.
even say like he said,
I
yeah,
can't
well,
even-
we got these 10, 14 feeders up here. You
Right,
know,
Mike. Hey, right.
they grab you,
Mike.
pull your head right off, you know? And I'm just like,
Oh,
wow.
big buggers.
Big boogers.
Yeah.
It makes me not want to go there. You know, I can just tell
Yeah.
you that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, I
I
can't
will
even
not be
fathom.
going there. And then you have the mouse spider, which I did some research on. And then and then of course he was talking about that, what's the other one? The funnel web?
The funnel web spider and the mouse
man.
spider.
That's
That right there is enough to keep me out of Australia. You don't have to do anything else. But then they go overboard with like the 10 deadliest snakes, great whites, and saltwater crocs. I'm good. you know?
Well, for a lot of people that haven't really researched Australia, apart from most people just know the big cities and Australia is this and that, and is home to a lot of quote unquote strange animals, right?
Mhm.
So them being home to strange, that's about all they know. But the really strange stuff, you've got to be there in Australia to hear about, because guess what? Australia was isolated for so long. And I mean, you have up north, like Simon said, you've got like rainforests up there. And there, you look at where the population of that country, where it's all gathered at, the majority of it, you don't get a lot of exploring in a lot of those areas because it's just too rugged. The country is just tough. And so I can imagine there's probably quite a few cryptids in Australia that
We've
people
never
see.
seen
The
Probably
whole
stuff we've never
interior.
seen out there.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
You know, whole interior. You know, there's a weird reptilian element to that, because I was talking to a guy years ago who was real into the whole David Icke thing, and he was a friend of my brother's. I can't remember his name, but he was real into that, and he said that all of the interior of Australia is underground hive for reptilians. That's what he believed. Like he was talking about. He was all telling me all this stuff. Of course, at that time, I was not really. I was just like, yeah, okay, you know. But now I'm looking back and I'm going like, I have heard this so many times. You know, like I was reading a book about the Solomon Islands, and how I was reading that you could literally go underground in some of those places and go all the way into other continents from under the ocean through the underground. That's what this guy was saying on that Solomon Islands book. I don't remember the guy that wrote it. Me and Anthony both read it. I don't remember if you remember Anthony, the book, but it was called like Solomon Island Legends or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Wait,
Of course.
that's the book. Yeah, I've been. That's my next read, man. That's the one you.
What
let
was
me
it called?
borrow.
Solomon
Yeah.
Island Mysteries. Good book, guys. If you ever want to read a really good book, another good book to read is anything that I'm going to write. I'm going to write all kinds of stuff, and then you're just going to have to read it.
There you go.
Just the ramblings of a madman.
Oh, is that the title?
Well, I'm going to do crazy, so I'm going to send postcards to my neighbors with me just holding a rifle,
It's already written. It's just not written.
just letting them know I'm still here. I just wanted you to know that. Holding an axe. You know,
Oh,
got to
definitely.
keep them on their toes,
Oh,
man.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing though. In all seriousness, though, Simon, he's got a lot of info on the Yowie and any other variants of the Yowie in Australia. And my hat's off to him. The guy is he knows his stuff.
He does.
I enjoyed that whole episode.
That was a good episode. So I wanted to say something. I was talking to a guy from South Texas yesterday. I was doing a ton of interviewing, and this guy had some really interesting stories. He actually gave me a fairy story
Oh, that's
out of South Texas. Yeah, because that whole South Texas corridor is really freaky,
Yeah.
dude. There's a lot of weird stuff out there.
The border belt.
And so there was a Cadejo story.
Oh,
I said it
nice.
like a Cadejo. I was listening to a Cadejo story. Now, there's a Cadejo story, and this guy, he was saying that basically it was a family curse.
Oh,
Not the guy from this was a different guy, but the guy yesterday was talking about fairies and about he had
Yeah.
a UFO encounter, all in that South Texas corridor.
well, that place is chock full of just all kinds of. I mean, I can't even begin to explain. I'm at a loss for words. That just, I guess the sky's the limit when it comes to some craziness or weirdness out there.
Let me tell you this story, guys, and we'll tell the audience this one. And then I wanted to talk about something that I posted on the Paranormal Round Table on Facebook.
Okay.
The Paranormal Round Table Facebook group. I posted a thing about that. But this guy had I'll tell you this story. This was down in Harlingen.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And he said it was like a familial story of a hellhound, like a Cadejo. And the basic premise was his family had been cursed. A bruja which is a witch, had cursed his grandfather because his grandfather and his grandmother got married against their will, against the parents' will. So it would be his great grandparents on his grandmother's side. They actually cursed the grandfather.
Oh.
And so things began to happen. The first thing that happened was he was driving along, and this was way back when the cars were probably very rinky-dink, rickety, whatever. And so he was driving along. Oh, actually, you know what? I should go back further. This was way back. He was in a wagon, and they were riding along, and then something jumped out, and it attacked the horse.
Oh, man.
And it killed it right in front of him. Like, it just attacked it. And this was like a work horse that they used to carry supplies.
Yeah.
So him and his brother got out, and they fled. And they got away from this thing, but this thing chased them through the woods. It stalked them, and they climbed a tree. The way that they described it, it had like the head, what looked like a pit bull. It was black. It had red eyes, and that this thing began to climb up the tree. And one of the brothers had the foresight to jump down while it was going up the tree and to retrieve a gun that had been dropped and shot at it. And it didn't kill it or hurt it, but it got its attention. And then that brother had a long head start. He took off running.
Right.
And the other brother got down and went the other way. So two brothers went in two different directions. The one with the gun was found killed.
Oh, wow.
And that would have been this guy's great uncle.
Oh, man.
And it started because of a curse. This is what he told me. And he said that the brother was killed, and they had the burial, whatever. And while they were at the funeral, people were hearing growling and snarling noises coming from around the audience
cemetery.
that was there at the cemetery. And of course, they started all having weird dreams. He said that his grandfather had like 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so there were 7 of them. And according to him, one of the sisters got some sort of illness, like something, I don't know if it was cholera or something, and she died. And then another one married a guy, and then they died in some sort of accident, in a train accident. And then one of his other brothers was found chewed up, also was chewed up. Yeah. And this all happened down in the valley. And they worked, like, I guess he had some sort of job, or like a construction job where they built stuff. So what ended up happening was they had to go to another like witch doctor to try to get this curse removed, and she couldn't break it.
Oh, man.
She said that they couldn't break it. It was literally blood magic. And so this entity, this hellhound or whatever, stalked the family for generations. And so his dad, I guess, this was the one I was confused with. His dad was driving along back in like the 60s or something, or 50s, and in a steel-bodied car, according to him. And this thing comes jumping out of the tree line, running on all 4s, but then going up on the hind legs, and like literally tries to tear the door off of the, once again, the dog, the head it looked like a dog. It was a black dog, had a very, he said it had a very like bulldogish looking head, according to what he told me. And there were these huge claw marks on the side of the car. Now he claims that he had actually seen pictures of what this thing had done to the steel body, and it had literally peeled part of the door backwards. You know how, and you open the door from one side,
whole
and
sardine can.
Yeah, it peeled it from the other side, and it was sticking out, and there were claw marks on it, and that it had bit the top of the car too, and with its jaws. And so this thing was trying to kill his dad. And he believes that it was responsible for a hunting accident that happened to his uncle.
Oh.
So this thing had been stalking the family. And so he thinks that it began to stalk him because he was awakened one night from growling and this weird noises or whatever coming from the foot of his bed. He wakes up and he sees this thing sitting there on all 4s. He said that it was black, just pitch black. The way he described it was like almost panther-like, but it was definitely canine.
Wow.
You can see the pointed ears kind of sticking up, and it had this real sleek head, and it had this big old jaws. And he goes, I could see it even in the darkness. He said he had like a neon Bud Light sign or whatever in his room, and he saw it there. And he said that he felt like if he moved any which way that it was going to attack him. And then he said there was a knock on the door. The thing turned its head, looked toward the door, and then ran and leapt out the window But when he said that it went toward the window, it didn't actually go through the wall or anything like that. It was like it just disappeared.
Wow.
So even generations later, the family's still
It's
cursed.
still cursed, yeah,
Wow.
ethereal. And now his son has, he's had 2 encounters with it. Now the other one he said that he had taken his son to a baseball practice and dropped him off, and he and his wife were driving home, and this thing ran up under their car, and they swerved and went in between 2 trees, and their vehicle got lodged between the 2 trees. And he said, I swear it was that black dog.
Wow.
It had red eyes, made them almost wreck, in between the 2 trees or whatever. And he said that luckily they didn't hit one of the trees,
Right.
and they were just lodged in between these 2 trees. And so then his oldest son, has claimed now that he has seen this thing. Him and his friend were riding their bikes, and this big black dog came out and was chasing them. And so,
I think that correlates, man. A lot of Cadejos, some of the elders or even stories say that it's a precursor or like a forewarning to death or something terrible is going to happen.
Well, do you think that you can actually be cursed by these things?
I think if generations have gone by and this same family is dealing with this same entity or entities or whatever, a vehicle for somebody to curse them or some kind of brujeria, I think so.
Yeah.
As far as that's concerned, if you wanted to place it in the realm of just the physical stuff, if you've got this creature, let's say if it was flesh and blood, it's been stalking that family for all those generations. And if it were real, if it's in the case, if it's totally physical, it's teaching teaching its young about this family that it's been stalking. And if it's smart enough, that I think the dog.
I don't think it's a dog man.
No, I'm just saying.
I think it's a spiritual creature that can
maybe even demonic.
Demonic, yeah. I think it's something ethereal.
Yeah.
That comes out. This generational thing. I've heard of this before, not with the Cadejo, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, people
doing this generational thing. Like I've heard of people having ghosts and things that stalk them for generations. I honestly, in my opinion, guys, I think it's something ethereal that can manifest itself in a physical way because demons can do that.
Yeah,
something malignant enough to hold a grudge.
Yeah,
because why, if that's the case, then
it's bound to them.
I think that would be counterproductive to the whole dogman, Sasquatch anonymity, the survival, staying silent, staying hiding, let's survive. That would, I think, striking twice in the same spot would be completely counterproductive to survival.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, this is not a
this
is not a dog man.
No,
I mean, even though it got up on 2 legs, I think that's just a demonic
red eyes.
When we interviewed Vic, he even said himself that he believes that these things can be demonic entities. Simon said the same thing. I mean, we've interviewed people and they believe that there's 2 different things going on there. They can be demonic or they can be physical.
Just to clarify my point, I was just, hypothesizing or speculating on the side that even if it was a real dogman, even if it was, you could say that could happen because I am of the position that the dogman possessed human level intelligence. So if you had this dogman from generations ago having young and teaching its young about this family it's been stalking, you know what I'm saying? That would make sense. But again, in my opinion, the red eyes is what gives it away as far as demonic. That's
talk about evil too, because the curse came from, I guess it would be his great abuelita, abuelita, and she and abuelo. They were so
great grandparents.
Yeah, they were so vindictive that they even cursed their descendants, which would be their descendants.
Yeah,
wow.
From that side, anyway, from her lineage, why would you do that? Because you're that angry and vindictive that the story was, according to what he told me, she was supposed to marry this guy that was very wealthy, but that he was ugly.
And she wasn't going to marry.
She wasn't going to marry,
no matter how much money
he had. As they say in Spanish, fail. It was un fail.
Mucho fail.
So, she didn't want to marry him. And so who knows? Maybe he was a dirty person. I think he was a cochino or something. I don't know, but they just didn't. She didn't want to marry him, so she married this other guy. He was suave, you know.
She probably liked him and all the stuff. And so, the other guy,
the other guy was chiflao, you know,
right.
like
in those days, bro.
The other guy was Pepe Le Pew.
He was very celoso. You know?
He was jealous. He was very
jealous, and so he went and got it, and he said, "Do something." He looked like Calibus from Attack of the Titans. I'm just kidding. I don't know. He's like, look at me.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, the reality is, brother, you know, in those days, this guy's great grandparents and stuff, arranged marriages was that was normal. It happened a lot.
So she did. She went out. She stepped out of bounds.
Yeah. She said, "No, I'm not going to marry this dude, no matter what, you know, money he's got.
You're not going to get that dowry.
Yeah. That ain't going to replace, you know, all the money he's got ain't going to replace his, you know, whatever deficiency she found in him." She's like, that no amount of money can fix that, so I ain't marrying him, and I like this guy, you know.
Papa don't preach, I keeping the baby. And then he was like, "No, you're not, because I'm gonna get an evil dog after you. You're gonna pay for this, Maria."
He was like, "How come I only have $1, Maria?"
But with this $1, I put a curse on you.
$1. We only have $1 and $1.
No, but it's a, you know, the
pretty freaky story.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured we'd start off with that, and then the only other thing I had to add to that story was just that it's still going on.
Oh yeah,
apparently, and now the kids are dealing with it, and that's very sad. And,
well, I guess this is one of those times you can say the sins of the father are coming back to haunt the children. It's unfortunate.
And to me, the sin is really coming from the great grandmother, you know, whatever that did
from that line, yeah. But
the legacy of sin,
it's horrible.
You know, it's
descendants have to pay for it.
I don't know if I'd call it a sin, but it's definitely whoever placed this curse on his family. That must have really ticked him off.
It was definitely an angry spirit for sure.
Yeah. To go and summon the Cadejo to go after your own descendants is pretty brutal, dude. But you know.
Yeah, that ticked him off quite a bit. Had to have.
I haven't. So I wanted to ask you guys something. I know, Chief, you have some stuff you want to get into, but I wanted to bring up something to you guys. I posted something to the Paranormal Round Table site a few days ago, and I wanted to see if you guys had seen it. And it was something about the Bat God. The Mayan bat god.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? Okay.
I thought that was like clickbait
Kamasot or
clickbait. What is this? Is like?
Well, no. Hold on. Let me give a little clarity on this. Okay.
I was like, DC is reaching really bad.
No, check it out. Check it out. Here's the thing. I read the articles and everything. The picture that you see on there, that was artwork done from these folks in Mexico. It's awesome looking. I love the artwork, but there is a bat god in
Kamazots.
Right. Kamazots.
I like to say Zots because it just sounds cooler. But go ahead. We'll do it your way. Okay, Mexican?
Okay.
Is that better? Actually, they're Guatemalans.
Yeah. Well, they're Mayans, Quiche, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, in the Quiche, we're actually from Honduras and Guatemala.
Yeah, they were all over the Central America.
They're not. That's not technically the Mexican, because just to tell you guys, the Mayans had. It was divided it was very much like Greece. They had city states. There was Sparta. There was Argos. There was Thebes. There was Athens. Yeah. So that's how it was. And so you had all these different cities, and they were all Mayan, but they all had their own little governors or whatever. And
it's like the
everybody had their own hood.
Yeah. Think of it in terms like the bands of the Sioux, the Ogallala and the Lakota, et cetera.
Okay.
It's like that.
They don't call themselves Sioux either.
No, they call themselves Lakota.
Yeah, a friend of mine, she's like, I'm not Sioux. That means something very bad. That's like the Apaches don't like to be called Apaches.
Not at all.
Yeah, because the Comanches, that's a word that basically means like
attacker. Or
it means like enemy. Yeah,
it's
let's put it in a nice way. It means enemy.
Yeah. But I totally understand. But the Quiche, that was their god, and it was.
That was one of their gods.
Right.
Yeah, and he was a bloodthirsty god. He was a god of death.
Death, and there's a few other things, but death, sacrifice, and a few other things associated with that. But I thought it was really interesting that they had a bat god.
And some of the archaeological, it shows his head looking almost like bat-like head with the big ears sticking out. And it's funny because I've gotten a story about a bat type creature. Now, as we move along on this episode, I have a story about that. It's not real big, it's not real long or whatever, but I was going to tell it in time with this. With Camasots.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And then I was also going to talk about a La Chiusa incident that happened, because we're talking about Mexican folklore. This isn't technically Mexican folklore, but it's Mayan.
It's related.
And the Mayans were in southern Mexico. And then there's another one that a story that happened to me when I was working security at a place. But if you want to go ahead and talk and tell your lame stories, Chief, go ahead.
I had broke down actually 4 scenarios with the lore. And the La Chiusa was your get inside. It's getting late. It's dark outside. Mm-hmm. Hey, bro, get inside the La Chiusa, right?
Yeah, it's out there.
And we covered the cucuy, right?
Yeah.
The cucuy was just your general crowd control.
That's just crowd control.
Hey, y'all get away from grandma's room. The cucuy's over there.
The cucuy's in the back, right there. The light flickers, and it's really just because, the bulb's burning out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really because the cucuy.
The cucuy's over there.
Get the kids back over here when
you
want them.
The Llorona was when the kids didn't want to, they weren't done swimming, right? So your cousin's like, hey, bro, when it gets dark, she shows up around water, bro. She shows up. We're at the river. We're camping. Let's go. We got to go. Mom said, let's go.
Well, you know what? I had an aunt that would take it to another level. She'd be at the swimming pool, and she'd be like, okay, your Llorona's going to come get you. You want to stay here, pendejo? Stay here and die.
She's coming right now. You hear her? She's crying. You hear?
I'm in 3 feet of water over here. I'm like, really, in a pool?
Hey, you know how
she drowned her kids. You know that she drowned her kids. I'm like, wow.
You know how Hispanic moms can be.
Yeah, I know.
There's an entity that has frightened every Hispanic child up to now.
The El Hee.
There's 2 of them.
El Hee. You see that? If you tell your kids, if they say Shamona 3 times in the mirror, then the El Hee will come get them.
Shows up. Like bleached skin and
hi, children.
No, there's 2 for every man, woman, and child on the planet. They're sighted daily. There's 2 right here on Wolf's feet. La chancla.
The chancla. There's more chanclas than there are people.
Yes,
there absolutely are. Yeah,
but no, terrifying, bro.
Yeah.
But those 4 scenarios, you got the chancla, the Llorona, la Chiusa, and the cucuy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's my time for the day.
You know what? Though, Llorona. My nephew's sitting right here. He has a Llorona story, but he don't want to tell it. He's got a ghost story too, but he don't want to tell it because he's just like that.
Yeah. Hey.
There was a Llorona sighting out of Uvalde or near Uvalde. Well, not really near it actually. Gardner State Park area, Concan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
There are people out there camping out on Gardner State Park, out on the Frio River all the time, and allegedly they were.
How come I've never heard of the Frio? Is that like a Mandela effect? Because I know Squid the other day was like, I'm going to go to the Frio River. And I never even heard of that.
You never been out there?
No, I had never heard of the Frio River. And so everybody's like, yeah, the Frio River, dude. And I'm like, remember, Anthony, we were talking about that?
Clear as water. Clear. Oh, you see all the way to the bottom. It's cold.
Okay. And you're from this timeline, so you know about the Frio River.
Yes.
Yeah. You and Loki and Squid.
But Mandela,
how could I have traveled all over the freaking Texas and I've never heard of this place?
I used to be 5'9".
Well, I mean, we talked about that. That's a freaky thing because actually, after you said that, there were a few people that I've actually talked to. I said, how tall do you think Chief was? And they were guessing around that range. 5'6", 5'8", 5'9", Nobody said like whatever, or 5'5", 5'6". Everybody was like 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". Because when you and Scorpion threw down, I thought y'all were about the same height.
I thought I was Scorpion's height.
It's so weird. That is so weird. And so.
But no, yeah.
Y'all went to the Frio River.
Frio River. It's Concan. It's south. I know, southwest of San Antonio.
Yeah, this make believe place that doesn't exist in my mind.
Where the water's clear. What's going on here?
The clear water.
Can we get some of that up to Flint, please?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know what? I couldn't believe it because when I saw that, I was like, did this place, did the drought that we had years ago, did that like just dry it up or something?
It affected it some. Like you could, from where we camped, which is a place called Neil's Lodge, we'd get dropped off about two bridges up the river, and it would normally take about an hour. And I think a couple of years back, it probably took us 2 or 3 hours to get back to camp. And there's some areas where you have to get out of the water.
Dude, I never heard. You've heard of the Frio River?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of the Frio River.
Y'all are just freaking me out, dude, because like I've been here and I've traveled all over Texas. I've been everywhere and I've never heard of this.
The Frio is a lot. I would say it's stretches away, but the parts that I'm familiar with and where it's at, it's down closer to Hondo, Pearsall, all those that area down there.
Uvalde
down there.
Yeah, and I've been all over that area, and I don't remember no Frio River. I thought it was a joke when I read that. I was like, the Frito River? Like, what is this?
No, not Fritos.
Yeah.
You can make great Frito pie with Fritos, but no, it's the Frio.
But
Frio.
There's a story out there, a family that was camping, and allegedly they were camping in cabins. A lot of the places out there, you can rent a cabin or you can just camp out of a tent, rough it. But they're playing hide and seek.
Adults playing hide and seek?
No, this was the children.
Okay,
of course.
I was about to say.
Well, the children are playing hide and seek, and as the little girl that was finishes counting, and she goes out. Nobody's around. Everybody's hiding, but she hears crying down by the river. She thinks, "Oh well, great. One of the cousins fell down. Scraped her knee or something. Somebody got hurt." Well, she runs down there, and allegedly there's a woman crying. There's a woman crying mid-river, but she's floating. Because I don't know if you've been to the Frio River when the water's high. It's pretty rapid.
I already told you I don't believe in this place, so you're asking me if I've been there. No,
okay.
I have not.
South Frio River.
Yeah, y'all two from this timeline.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing with the Frio River, when the water's up, I mean, it gets beautiful. It gets beautiful.
Huh.
I've been in a lot of those areas down there. It's beautiful. It's also, for the most part, the way I understand it and what I've experienced is a lot of it, it's a lot of campgrounds, camp areas that people go to. And it gets pretty creepy at night sometimes.
But yeah, no, so she noticed, her and her cousins noticed an apparition on the river of the Llorona.
Wow.
So, but that was
so who are these people? You know them?
No, this is a story that I heard.
Okay, so it's a lie. They're like, this is a story that I heard. This is the name of a horse I used to own, ma'am.
His name Ed?
His name was
No, it was George.
So but you know what though, that is a very common theme. Just to tell the people that are listening, folks, here's what happened.
It's the water again.
Well, it's the water. Here's what happened during the siege of Tenochtitlan. When Cortez's forces, what ended up happening, they ended up taking the city, and then they were in turn laid siege to by the forces of the Aztecs. But they eventually were relieved by their allies, the Tlaxcalans and the Tabascans, who actually helped to push the Aztecs, crush them against the walls as the Spaniards defended. It's a very interesting story. What ended up happening was, not to get too preachy about history, but because I love history, the Aztecs were eventually defeated, and it was predominantly because of the Indians that around them that they had oppressed.
Yeah, the natives.
Because they were, because when people talk about like Aztlan, Azteca, and all this stuff, I'm thinking, do you realize that was about 30%, and the other 70% were being oppressed by them? So let's not forget that they were ripping out their hearts and doing all these horrible things. So the Indians that were being oppressed by the Aztecs were more than happy to come and help defeat them. So they did, and they relieved the Spaniards. And what ended up happening as the Aztec forces had gone into the city, and then they were eventually surrounded and slaughtered, there was a woman that was heard wailing. And this is a legend that goes way back to the siege of Tenochtitlan. And of course, it is on the lake. That is and I could tell you all about the Aztecs. I've studied them inside and out. It's a very fascinating civilization, bloodthirsty as no civilization has ever been. And one of the things that happened was that there was a legend that grew up from that there was a woman saying, my children, we are lost. My children, we are lost. And so they heard people wailing, throw the treasure into the lake, we are lost, we are lost. So from that legend of the water, a woman wailing on the water, there was something that was born of that. This is my belief, and I really believe this because I have talked to people who have looked me dead in my eye, even a cousin of mine, and they told me point blank, I have heard the Llorona, I have seen La Llorona, and I think it is a legend that follows like the Banshees. There's Irish. I know a couple people that are from Ireland, and they swear that Banshees they'll hear them. And it's an Irish thing, and I think that this is a Mexican thing. I don't think that it's just any other Latino race. I think it's a Mexican thing, and I think it stems completely from the siege of Tenochtitlan when that woman was heard wailing, and I believe that it was carried on, but something was born of that. And so the legend became that a woman had drowned her kids or whatever. I don't believe that part. I think that's
right. That's just regional changes to the story.
That's a folklore.
That was keeping you away from the water.
Yes, but there is something to that Aztec legend, and that Mexicans carry that, I believe, in through the blood. I believe that there's a bloodline there, that there is something that was born of that. Now, whether you want to call it ancestral memory, or if you want to say that there's an actual entity that was born that day from the blood that was spilled from the fall of a civilization, that's a very heavy metaphysical thing that happens.
Yeah, it's a lot of death involved.
I know also, like we were talking about the Bible Belt earlier, and you hear about
in this episode.
You mean the border belt?
We were talking about the border belt,
the Bible belt.
Wait a minute. About the Bible? Sorry,
the Bible Belt.
It's full of Bibles. You got a lot of religious Latinos in the border belt.
A lot of religious Latinos.
Correction, border belt, and
talking about the border patrol.
You hear dozens and dozens of stories about women in white, or the weeping women, or the Llorona. You know, from La Homer Road, Highway 83. You know, you just an influx of tons of these stories down there.
Because whenever an Anglo person or a white person will hear or see a woman on the water or something like that, like the Lady of the Lake up in Dallas, I had a friend of mine, he's seen that. He doesn't say it's La Llorona, you know?
Right.
But when you hear of a water spirit or a female spirit, and actually me and Tony were talking about this last night, there's a lot of legends that go from Ireland all the way to China.
Yeah.
That if a spirit of a person is deceased in the water, that they will actually, it is a stronger entity for whatever reason, because maybe of the electromagnetic energy. I'm trying to get scientific.
Negative, what is it? Negative ions?
Yeah, well, the electromagnetic energy. Yeah, and so what I'm just trying to think that could be why the entity would be stronger. The legends are that they are stronger. So what I'm thinking is the Mexican people, they associate that with La Llorona, which is, like I said, from that legend of the siege of Tenochtitlan, the fall of the civilization of the Aztecs, which were the predominant society at that time.
Yeah.
Now, they weren't the only pre-Columbian society, but they were the predominant.
The ones on top,
the dominant ones.
Yeah,
yes, they were the dominant ones. They had taken over the Zapotecs, Mixtecs, whatever.
And they'd also defeated the Mayans in the southern portion.
They had defeated the Mayans and driven them out, which that's why the civilization of the Mayans in the south fell before the Guatemalan and the Hondurans. Now, what ultimately the key, what do you call them? From the Camazotz people.
Camazotz, the Quiche. That's a part of the Mayan
Quiche. I was going to say Calinque because we were talking about that earlier. The Quiche. Now, the Quiche were actually eventually defeated as the Spaniards moved south, and with their allies, they actually overthrew them and defeated them.
Kind of like an egg and cheese, like a pie, you know?
Quiche. We're talking about a quiche now. But that's the history of that. And I know that if anybody ever wants to read some really, really, really amazing history, read a book called Cortez and the Downfall of the Aztec Empire by John Manship White. It's a very good book, dude. I read it. I was on a flight to Vegas and I was bored, you know, and I was just like, you know what? I just got on the plane. I said, I'm gonna start reading this book, and I almost finished it by the time I got landed. It's not a real long read, but it's very interesting. I mean, like, he goes into depth about, like, and he'll give you the true story of, like, what we know, you know, and of course, you can read, there were lots and lots of different stories that went on, the battles that went on from the Incans, you know, and how they were defeated, and how the Mayans were wiped out, you know, and so Mayans aren't really wiped out, though. They're still there. They were defeated. Yeah, they were defeated eventually, but they were very, very bloodthirsty people. I mean,
the Aztecs were.
Kukulkan was the main god of the Mayans, and he was demanding blood for the sun to rise, and then, of course, it was Huitzilopochtli for the Aztecs. Yeah.
Well, they kind of co-opted that particular set of gods from the Mayans.
Well, actually, the Toltecs were there before, and then the Aztecs came. And, of course, like I said before, there were two cities. There were twin cities. There was Tenochtitlan, and then there was the other one. I can't remember the name of it at the top of my head, but it was a big city that they didn't touch.
Right.
And it was just uninhabited. Because
you're talking about Teotihuacan?
Teotihuacan. There you go. They didn't have it. They didn't mess with it because it was, like, considered cursed or whatever, and so they didn't touch it for whatever reason, which was so weird because those cities were already there when they came, and nobody knows who built them.
Well, you know, there's speculation that before the Toltecs, and the reason Mexico has its name today of Mexico, right? The original inhabitants of the area where Tenochtitlan is and all that other stuff is the Mexica.
Mexica, yeah, Mexica.
The Mexica, that's where they got Mexico from, because they were the original inhabitants before the Aztecs came in and took over. Toltecs, Aztecs. Before
but that has not been proven. That is all speculation.
Well, the tribe originally did live there. Now, whether they were dominant or whatever they did, but they're considered the original native, and that would be generations before the Aztecs and the Mayans, or the Mayans and then the Aztecs showed up. They were supposedly kind of like with the Utes and the Navajo people from Utah. From the Four Corners. They talk about the Anasazi that were there before them. Yeah, the ancient ones.
The people that built into the side of the cliff, the cliff dwellers.
It's something to that level.
There's a story that I read about how there was a civilization that was living in that region before the Aztecs took it over. And it wasn't the Mexicans, it wasn't the Toltecs. It was another civilization that was there in between those civilizations.
The Olmecs? Olmecas?
I don't want to say the Olmecs. I'm not for sure that that's who it was, but it was
Toltecs.
No. There was a Toltecs. I think were after the Mexicans, and then they just kept going, But there was another group that was their contemporaries, right. Okay, and then eventually the Aztecs overthrew them, kind of like the Romans did the Etruscans, But the Etruscans, for years, the Romans had to pay tribute to the Etruscans. Well, the Aztecs paid tribute to this other race that was living in that region,
right? And
once again, they had just co-opted that city. They weren't the builders. But they went into a temple, and they were going to pay the king of this other civilization, I can't remember who they were, a great homage. They're paying him a great homage. And so while he's sitting in this darkened temple waiting for them to come out and do this great thing,
the ceremony or something.
This ceremony, yeah, he sees one of the high priests wearing the skin of his daughter.
Oh, wow.
And so he was infuriated. He was like, and to the Aztecs, that was a great honor. They had sacrificed her to their highest god and then flayed her skin. And then he was just like, he flipped out. So then, of course, the Aztecs got driven out, and they spent another 30, 40 years out on the outskirts, skulking in the desert, from away from, whatever, because they were driven out. And then eventually they marshaled their forces, and they came back, and then, of course, because the Aztecs were a confederation of different tribes that actually came together. And like I said, I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to go back and research it, but they overthrew that particular tribe, and then they took it over. But they have no real memory. Like, the Aztecs can't really tell you where they came from. They know they came from the north.
Aztlan.
Yeah, and so a lot of people believe that where they came from was Cahokia. And that they had just kept going until they ended up south, because they even have a genetic, they've even done genetic testing, and they actually, their DNA corresponds to some of these tribes. And like we've talked about this before, how the dogman follows the corn, and how the corn, like, it ended up in this region, then it ended up in this region, and it just kept going because the Aztecs were agrarian. And that they were actually, they moved, like, I guess when they came across the Bering Strait, they went to the middle of the country. Then they ended up in Wisconsin or whatever, that region. And they just came straight down.
And all the way down.
Illinois. And they just came straight down. And so they followed archaeologically. The DNA is actually, I've read all that, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that is part of the Mexican folklore, because all those legends and all those stories come from somewhere. And I think that the Aztecs, they were told to continue going until they found the eagle eating the snake, right?
On top of a cactus.
On the cactus, yeah. And so that's on the flag now.
A lot of that correlates because and I don't know how many of these videos are actually legit, but if you put in Llorona on YouTube, a lot of them are sightings of her in Mexico City, and allegedly she walks down the street weeping, and then when she gets to the cemetery, she disappears.
Oh,
wow! So there's dozens of those videos.
Well, that's Mexico City, because that's what
That's right where it went down.
That's where it went down, and they've built all of Mexico City. Was built over these temples. They'll be doing excavations, and the ground will fall through. And they'll find like an altar, where a temple or something that was there, because the Spaniards did a pretty good job of eradicating a lot of the gruesome altars and things like that. But every once in a while, they'll find there'll be an archaeological find, and they'll find just like a room just full of skeletons, you know? And I mean, if you want to read about what they did, I mean, there's all these people nowadays romanticizing it. And it's just like, that's insane to me because, you know, for it to rain, they would kill people. They would kill little children for the rain. And then they would, and this isn't no make believe. They can archaeologically prove this.
Droughts.
You know? The droughts, if there was a drought, they would kill the children. They would make them cry, the tears. They would stone them, lop off heads of virgins for harvest. You know?
For fertility.
They were cannibals too. They would eat, you know, and so
to gain the power of their enemies.
They would eat human thighs. It was very important to them, and so it was just a lot. It was a lot of crazy stuff that went on. But you would think that a culture so steeped in blood and magic would be a breeding ground for paranormal and spiritual things, and it is. It very much is. There's a very my great aunt used to always tell me that there was a lot of petty vindictiveness down in Mexico, and she said, you know, that when a woman was celoso, you know,
envious.
She was jealous, she would go and get the hair of the person, you know, and then
take it to a bruja.
and the bruja would do the magic, and then they would the sangra, you know, is the blood, you know, and then they would do the magic, you know, to like curse them, you know, and to make them ugly or to make them sick or to whatever,
or have an accident to
that's where the Chiusa comes from. A lot of brujeria, you know.
Yeah,
the
a vehicle used by witches.
Stop saying a vehicle because it sounds like they're on a broom.
It's a medium way.
A vessel. It's a vessel.
Oh, you got the new one now. That's the V600. That one can move.
Yeah. You know, and speaking of the Lechuza.
The Warner Brother witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the broom on there. Like,
you know, speaking of the Lechuza, I finally got with my mom and she gave me the lowdown on the story about this I would say about three greats as far as uncles concerned. And, the story with him and how he caught a witch.
I thought you told us that where it had the knots and all that.
Well, she gave me more the story that.
So we got to have to hear it again. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, man, it's terrible. All
right, well, hey, go ahead and wake me up with this. Take a little nap. Wake me up.
You know, so basically, like I said, the story was this is a little town in Mexico, and in those days, it was nothing but a spot in the road that, you know, a wagon would come through in order to go to a bigger
town. Like a lot of towns nowadays.
So
this one horse town?
Yeah. Oh, this was less. Maybe one donkey.
One goat.
One donkey. But this uncle, he was out in the fields and, of course, doing his thing all day long. And then he came back at the end of the day, it was going down, and he came back to where the trees were at the edge of the field, and he was getting his stuff ready, you know, because it was about to get dark. He couldn't do no more work, and he's going back to the house. While he was gathering all his stuff and getting ready to take the horse and everything, go back to the house, that he heard a lechuza flying overhead. And as soon as he heard that, well, he started looking around, wondering what the heck's going on. Then he looked up and saw lechuza, and so immediately he sprung into action. And, of course, trying to catch it and everything else. From what I understood is that he set like a little rope trap or where it landed, and it caught it by the leg. You know,
like a snare kind of deal?
Like a snare. That's what I understand. And, of course, once that happened, he grabbed his scarf that he had. In those days, you know, there was these long scarves they'd have around their necks for all the sweat and stuff.
Men?
It's a scarf, like
a man was wearing a scarf down there.
Think of it kind of like think of it kind of like a more of a handkerchief, but it was huge. Long story short, he grabbed it as soon as he snared it. He grabbed that big long piece of cloth and started making knots. And as he made knots, he was reciting the prayers called Las 12 Verdades del Mundo, the 12 Truths of the World, and he was saying these prayers as he's tying the knot. So during this time, while he's praying,
explain what that is. The 12 prayers.
The 12 prayers, the 12 truths of the world.
Las 12 verdades del mundo,
right?
Yeah.
Basically, you're praying, and kind of like when they do the rosary, it's along those lines. I'm not going to tell you
12 truths.
Yeah. So he's praying as he's tying these knots. Meanwhile, this bruja this lechuza that he caught, which was really a bruja, was trying to struggle to get away. But as soon as he got done tying the last knot and finishing up the prayers, he said she dropped It dropped down there, still attached to the snare, but it was a woman. And he had seen a lechuza flying, and then once he got done with the prayers, boom, here she drops to the ground.
It was like a binding.
Yeah, it was basically a binding thing.
Bound, like a binding prayer.
Right, and it stripped her of her power of being able to be in the, transformed or morphed into a lechuza.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as she hit the ground, my uncle this great-great-uncle of mine started moving towards her to kill her, and that she started begging, please don't kill me, let me go, I've got a family, and so on and so forth. And so this whole exchange went back and forth as she pled for her life, because she kept telling him things like, I've got a family, I've got to get back to them, and so on and so forth. And eventually, from what my mother told, is that the conclusion to that is he went over there and basically he grabbed a rod, stick, because you have those for your goats and stuff to move around. He just had the stick.
To prod them.
He started smacking and beat the dog daylights out of her, and basically making her swear not to be doing that anymore. And that's the only way he would let her go, is if she swore. At the end of the day, she swore and he let her go, but he didn't kill her, which is what his first intent was, because she was a bruja, practicing black magic.
Yeah, I don't see a person that practices black magic being too honest.
Right, but the point being is that I don't know any more of the details outside of that, is if and when he bound her in some form or fashion. I don't know, but that was the end state. He beat the tar out of her.
What if the truth, though, is that he was actually just an abductor? And he abducted some poor girl and just beat her and put her in a cage. And
hey, I'm just telling you the story, man. We
did some kind of horrible human centipede experiment on her.
I know there was a similar story of a witness that said that a lechuza was struck like with a rock, like they threw a rock, and that the lechuza began to curse back at him.
Oh, wow.
And that allegedly they ran in the house because it engaged them. But he said by morning, whenever there was no sign of them.
Right.
By morning, there was no sign of them. So he got in his car and he took off. And he said down the road, he saw a young girl that had like an abrasion or like a laceration on her head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so allegedly that was the bruja that
happens
pelted with a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the story. That's how it goes. It's always like that. The lechuza and something
by morning it's normal.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Cinderella thing. An evil, twisted form of Cinderella. By midnight, you turn back into the pumpkin. The coach does that kind of thing.
I got a lechuza story for you. I got a couple.
And that's all we have for you this week, folks. Join us again next week when we bring you the conclusion to this great episode about Mexican folklore. As always, like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you hear. Support the show, and thank you so much for everything, for your time. Thank you and good night.